To whom it may concern, my name is Maya, and I'm a sophomore. I'm incredibly grateful for the quality of my education and the progressive nature of my school district. However, after speaking with my peers, I've noticed a glaring issue in the district's English curriculum. Its lack of diversity not only hampers our learning, but also our development as empathetic citizens. Here is my case for more diverse books. Hi everybody, my name is Maya, and today I will be reading you all a letter that I sent to every English teacher at my school, the vice principals, the principal, the superintendent, the board of the district, all the fancy schmancy people. This letter concerns the lack of diversity in English classes in the United States. I find this to be a serious issue, one that will hopefully be addressed after the coronavirus is defeated. You know, vaccines. All that jazz. And this is my letter. I will be reading it to you, and then we will have a little chat about my further thoughts, opinions, ideas, etc. Language is the foundation of society. It can be heard, written, seen, felt, and tasted. Whether rooted in literature, dance, or food, language is the manifestation of communication. Stories are the core of the human experience. Elaborations, depictions, reflections of importance. If language is a mirror, we need to see our similarities and differences in it. This develops empathy. Language is a phenomenon transcending place and time periods, satisfying the human craving for connection. It is a form of connection all people treasure and share. The English curriculum in my school district dismisses this connection. The district's website states that its very first goal is inclusive excellence. It would seem this goal should not encompass only the student body and the staff, but also what is taught. Inclusive excellence is not reflected in the high school English curriculum. This curriculum fails to reach its potential for diversity and connection building. School plays an immense role in shaping our future generations. It's the ideal environment to foster empathy, acceptance, and equality. Schools can make changes in waves, but they do not seize this opportunity. Certain examples of this failure, such as the prevalence of bullying and the racial and ethnic achievement gap, are colossal in magnitude. There's no simple solution, but there is one way to chip at these issues. We need more diverse books. In the 2019-2020 school year, my English class has read All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, or Salinger if you're my dad, Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Macbeth by William Shakespeare. These novels are refutably important works of literature. That said, all were written by white men. Each of these texts featured troubled white men at their forefront. Do these novels reflect the students at my high school? According to Public School View, the minority enrollment at my school is 42% of the student body. 51% of students are female, while 49% are male. In diversity, my school is in the top 20% of public schools in the state. Quite simply, our books do not reflect the diversity of our students or help them to understand one another. There are a plethora of benefits to more diverse books. Drexel University states, quote, creating greater multicultural awareness and inclusion helps students with different backgrounds and needs succeed, and encourages acceptance and helps prepare students to thrive in an exponentially diverse world. Students become more empathetic when they're exposed to plots and characters they can and cannot relate to. Literature has the power to challenge the development of prejudices in our youth. But we don't get these stories. We don't get the racial or religious diversity. We don't get characters belonging to the LGBTQ+ community or disabled characters. We call for more mirrors for the good, bad, and ugly of every culture. Incorporating diversity into English lesson plans should not be an unreasonable feat. At the moment, there are about 129,864,880 books in the world. My district is not short of material to consider when forming a curriculum. The argument could be made that high school English has classics at the forefront, many of which were written by white men. But what about the Brontes? What about Toni Morrison? What about Virginia Woolf, Sojourner Truth, Josephine Brown, Suisun Pharr, Booker T. Washington, Onoto Watana? English class is not solely responsible for coding students with an aptitude for writing and critical thinking. English class is about storytelling and connection. We need to connect to a variety of characters, tales, and backgrounds. English education has an obligation to teach students to accept, understand, and hopefully love one another. By incorporating diversity into literature, my district has the opportunity to teach empathy. And, at the end of the day, isn't that the most important lesson of them all? Thank you for your time, Maya. Yada, yada, yada. Email formalities. So that is the letter that I sent to all of the English people in my district, and I received a lot of really interesting replies. I ended up having a meeting, which I mentioned in a previous video, with the vice principal, my teacher, and the English coordinator, and that was a really productive meeting. And I'm hoping that when we go back to school next year, we'll be able to continue the conversation, because this is an issue I feel is really crucial and is a really, really lacking area in my district's curriculum. So here is why I'm so passionate about diversity in books and a multitude of authors from a multitude of backgrounds being exposed to students. First of all, we should be reading things written by people from around the world. I am taking Spanish at school, and I love that class, and we're constantly learning about different Hispanic-speaking countries. For instance, we learned about practices in Mexico versus Peru on New Year's Eve. I think it's really important to learn about culture so that we can all be more mindful of the world around us and learn about the beautiful dissimilarities and similarities that connect all people. Moreover, I was talking to my sister Abby about this topic, and I asked her when in her life she had first read a character that she felt represented her background. And her answer was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. And the reason she picked Cinder is because Cinder is meant to be Asian American in the book, and she has no biological parents left. Her father's passed away, and her mother has as well. And my sister connected to her because she is adopted from China. She's Asian American. She obviously is adopted, so she doesn't know her biological parents. And I asked her how old she was when she read Cinder, because I was probably like 2 when I read the first book or heard the first story with a white female character. And her answer was when she was 12. And that kind of broke my heart, because children should read characters that they can connect to, you know? That would make them feel less alone. And I think that's a huge problem in schools today, is loneliness, because we don't connect with one another effectively. Additionally, diverse books in schools are not taught, but they are offered. And this was also a major point in my meeting with the vice principal. And I think this is a big issue. So not only do books featuring diverse ranges of characters and authors need to be available to students, but they need to be actively taught. For example, our school-wide read this year was Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I included that in my March wrap-up for this year. I enjoyed it. I think I gave it a solid 3 stars. It was pretty darn good, and it followed a Dominican-American girl and her life story. Now, that book was our school-wide read, but in reality, no one signs up for the all-school read. Partially because some people don't like reading, which I understand. Partially because they have sports and other extracurricular activities or volunteering, and partially because school is a lot of work as it is, and people do not want to devote their individual free time to more quote-unquote learning. For that reason, I am under the assumption, and I think I'm correct, that not a ton of people signed up for the all-school read. This is problematic. Although the books were available to students, they were not actively told to read them. There's no incentive to read them. In school, I think English class has a huge problem where People only read books for a grade. If you read the book, you will get an A on the test. If you don't read the book, you will struggle. There is incentive there. Of course, you have Spark Notes now. I love Spark Notes. I'm not going to bash Spark Notes, but with Spark Notes, you don't even need to read the book to get the A. You just need to read the summary and the bullet points. In English class, at least there is some sort of reward system to read the book. However, for an all-school read, that is entirely dependent on the amount of pleasure the reader derives from books. Unfortunately, in my generation, books are not a huge part of the American teenage culture anymore. We have Snapchat, we have Insta-ounce, Gram. We have Game Pigeon, which I didn't know about, but apparently that's a thing. And there's nothing necessarily horrible about social media. I will have a video about that in the future, but it does take away from past hobbies such as reading. And because the only incentive to read the all-school read, which is the only book this year in my 10th grade English class that has been suggested, that was not written by a dead white guy, Poet X, that's the only one, because there is no active reward system. People are less likely to read them and less likely to gain the benefits of reading a more diverse character. Those are my thoughts on the lack of diversity in English classes in the United States. I would love to hear yours below. Please let me know your experiences. I've heard that this gets better as you enter AP English classes, and I have no doubt about that. I'm really excited for AP Language. But that being said, there will always be 10th graders. And so the lack of diversity in the 10th grade needs to change, even if it's just that one grade, even if it's just that one experience. You're limiting kids in their range of the world, in their view of the world, and their perception of people. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.